All right, you loyal listeners. Welcome to another episode of Agents Influence Conversations with Jason Cass. And today I am joined with one of my good friends, one of my longtime industry friends. A lot of times you loyal listeners know that I just interview people that I've never met before. That is on the opposite side of the spectrum when we talk about the relationship that I have with Steve Anderson. Steve, welcome to the podcast again.
Jason, always a pleasure to have a chat with you. So thanks for having me.
I could speak with you whenever I could speak with you as much as I wanted to because I just love talking with you. We see each other every so often out there in the conferences or whatever, but I purposely always want to do a podcast. You've been on 4 of mine now, and I always want to do one every year, 2 years with you because so much is changing, right? What a great time to be alive in the insurance industry. Someone like yourself, Steve, who was battling in the 80s and 90s and transforming the industry, and it's a slow process. But in the last 5 to 6, 7, 8 years, man, we've had some movement, haven't we, Steve?
There's definitely been some traction gained, and I think it's, I have to say, I think it's people like yourself and others who are coming in and saying, hey, we need to rethink how we do things. I think it's some of us older ones who are going, yeah, probably we do. Things are changing, so let's figure out what that looks like.
But I have to admit, being the one who's always trying to push the envelope, and all those who've come in before me or after me, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the wisdom of those who have been there when it was slow, before we had download, right? Some of us depend on who you're talking to. You talk to Rick Morgan, he still brags about how he created T-filing in 1984. You know what I mean? So
exactly.
So it's like that's a lot of stuff. And when I just said T-filing, do you have so many ideas? How many people are listening to this right now? I have no idea.
Probably never heard of it, right?
We've never heard of transaction filing.
Yeah.
But anyways, very, very smart process that you can do. Instead of doing it by name, you do it by the transaction, which is usually following the date. Mike Beard actually learned of that in the early 2000s when I was first working, and we would have a yellow envelope that we would write on it September. And every transaction went in there in the order from front to back. And if somebody had an issue, you didn't have to go try to find the file, because most people who are listening don't understand that, like, there were stacks of files on these filing cabinets, and
file cabinets,
right? And someone had to file all that crap.
Yeah. Oh. I remember when we went to electronic, we got rid of 17 file cabinets in the agency I was in at the time, and that was crazy too. What do you mean you're going to scan and store paper electronically? You can't do that.
Can't do that.
So you can't do that.
What happens if you lose it? What happens, and the thing is, Steve, I was young in 2001, 2002, brand new in this industry, and I was the person who always had to file the files, right?
Right.
And we all know, as independent agents and loyal listeners out there, it's the same people that are always calling your agency, right? And it was the same files I was always stacking, and I'm like, why are these same people always the ones? But man, that's something we don't have to do anymore. We do. We just do it electronically, right?
Exactly.
We're storing things in our management system. We're attaching it. And now we're getting to RPA automation, which I think is going to be a huge thing going forward. Jeff Roy has RPA now attaching files in his downloads. 1,800 a night is what this thing is transacting. So. We went from the file cabinets, then we went over to doing it electronically, and then kind of storing it in the cloud. And now we have these bots in there storing that in the cloud for us. How amazing, and where we have come from, Mr. Anderson. Wow.
Well, and I think you're right. It really, the last, I don't know how many, but 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, I do feel like, the technology certainly is getting better. RPA is a great example of that. And people adapting it or figuring out what it can do to benefit them. And that really has always been, for me, the key, right? Technology for technology's sake is a waste of money and time. Technology that helps improve the customer experience and operational efficiency and those kinds of things are definitely worth experimenting with.
They definitely are. And well said, well put there. So loyal listeners, back in 2003, 2004, I was at the Illinois IIA. Actually, I think at the time it was PIIA. These names they have there, Steve.
I know.
But we're at Branch and Lemonade and Hippo. I mean, so did we get any better? What was amazing about Steve is you were always talking about technology, right? And this was something that really you were really rubbing against people who, at the time, you were probably in your 40s. There's people you're talking to who are in their 60s and 70s who are thinking this is never going to happen. A lot of the stuff you were way ahead. Especially when it came to mobile use. I want to give you props there. There was a lot of things that you helped people understand. I remember you telling me, or telling, this was actually in Louisiana when I saw you, you were telling us about, we're going to use this phone device when we're on the go, but I prefer a tablet when I'm at home reading my the New York Times on my,
Yep.
And you started to associate where we would use these different types of things. And loyal listeners, this is 2011, 2010. iPhone came out 3 years before that.
Yeah, iPhone came out in 2007.
Seven.
So, and people don't remember now. It was actually a slow start for the iPhone. And no keyboard and it was not an instant success like people think of it today.
Right. An app store. Like, why would I go to this thing and download things onto what in the heck would I do that for? Now we can't imagine that, whatever. And Steve, I'm excited. Like, what are we doing today? What are we hearing today that's like a slow start, right? What are we hearing today that it's like, man, I don't know if that'll ever happen. And then in 10, 20 years, right? Like, I'll tell you, I don't know. Don't know. But crypto. When we talk about taking payments with crypto and using blockchain, I think today that's unimaginable, like the App Store was in 2008, right? But here we are. What do you think about that?
Well, and I will separate cryptocurrency from the blockchain.
Okay.
Blockchain allows cryptocurrency to take place, but it really are two different things. And what's interesting to me is that the insurance industry is one of the leading industries in looking at and experimenting with what blockchain could streamline, I guess is the right way to say it.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. One area that to me is really interesting is ocean cargo, right? So not something most agents deal with, but you have something manufactured overseas that has to go on a truck from the plant to the port to the ship, back to a port here, back on a truck, get delivered somewhere to a warehouse. Well, the insurance changes every time that product, that container changes. And in the past, it's been a massively paper-focused process. And with blockchain, there are experiments going on to, for example, automatically create contracts when that container full of stuff is scanned at the port and not having to get paper and move things around. It's not fully implemented yet, but those are some of the experiments and some of the ideas that are going on to actually look at what can blockchain do, for individuals, for the industry, again, helping to streamline processes that in ocean cargoes, have been around for hundreds of years, right? So how can we, and again, that's, as you said earlier, that's change, which is hard to implement and get people adopting it, but you got to start somewhere and kind of prove the idea. So that's just one example. I think augmented reality, virtual reality, I mean, we can pick all kinds of interesting technologies. Even, I've got here, let's see if people, I don't know if people can see, but do you know what these are?
Those are Google glasses of some
Well,
type,
they look like Google glasses. They're actually
speakers?
Amazon frames. They're Echo frames. So again, I could put these on kind of thick area here. They've got speakers inside, and I can ask Alexa, through my frame to do things.
Gosh. Well, listen,
Now,
this is the reason
is
why
that
you
crazy?
need to watch YouTube.
Yeah. Well, is that
Wow.
crazy? Yes. And who knows what it could be used to do. Again, and I think that's, and I've also got to, I'll reemphasize what I said earlier. I love playing with the technology, but it really, the purpose is to help improve the customer's experience with us as agents. And that should be, and at least for me, is the focus.
Yeah. You know, I think the blockchain, I think, will be really good when you think about it's a ledger, right? And I think that it will create that, right? If you think about it in a weird way, not really, like if I track a package, right, and from one place to another, that thing is going through a scanning process that keeps it going down this path, kind of like that cargo keeps it going. I think that there's a lot of things that can be said for proof of, like, you know, mortgages. I've heard that talked about before.
Yep.
What scares me and what not scares me, let me say, what makes me wonder, Steve, is, for instance, in the mortgage industry, you're going to eliminate a whole set of people, title agents, you know, insurance agents, possibly mortgage brokers. You're going to have the person one end and then the buyer right here, and they are able to connect off of that stuff. And I think to myself, in this world we live in, I guess technology is such a driver, whereas in the past it seems like good ideas didn't get to sprout because big business would keep them down. And now it's like there's ways that this information and technology gets out there. And I think in 10 to 20 years, we don't have to keep beating it up. I'm just saying in 10 to 15 years, I think you and I are going to come back to this podcast and say, wow, look at this stuff we were doing. I think a lot of it's not even invented yet. But yes, I think there is a lot of stuff. How would I do insurance with augmented reality, right? How is this IoT really meshing? I heard a lot about that. Now I don't. I think all this stuff is going to come together to create something pretty
well. Yeah,
wild.
IoT, telematics, smart home, smart buildings. You know, there's all kinds of things, and maybe you don't hear as much about it, but I see all kinds of implementations of it. And again, people experimenting. I mean, and the risk mitigation aspect of all of those things are pretty significant.
It is. Steve, tell me what you're doing now. So Steve Anderson with the Steve, you can go to steveanderson.com. He's out there. He's got all kinds of stuff. He can help you. You should get his newsletter. It comes every Thursday. You should really check out what sorry, his name's Steve Anderson. I call him Steve-O. So what Steve is doing. But lately, Steve, you have really come up with this idea. And I'm going to tell you, I don't even know, because hearing directly from you what it is. Tell me about this Catalyst, or where did this come from? What is this?
I'd be happy to. So I basically think the beginning way to think about it, Jason, is that taking everything I've done for 25 years now in terms of helping agents with technology and improving it and scaling it. So what's actually really exciting to me is I have partnered with 7 Big I state associations that actually have invested significant amounts of money into getting this entity going. And the reason is all 7 of them, plus other states, have had a strategic goal of helping agents with technology. They've recognized it. They know it's a problem for agents, and they want to provide some help and solutions. And so, long story, we don't have time for now, but how we came together. And Catalyit is built on my intellectual property, things that I've created over the years and things that I've done consulting-wise. And we provide it to agents through a monthly subscription program. And we now have, so those 7 partner states is what we call them, started it. And we officially launched last October. And then we now have 11 other states. So we have 18 Big I states that are offering this service to their members. And wow. It really, I can boil it down into 4 things that we do. We help agents discover technology. We help agents evaluate that technology. We help agents select the best technology for their organization, and we help them implement it so they get the most value out of what they are investing in. And, you know, you've already said, right, technology continues to change so rapidly. You know, how do agents keep up? Well, they haven't been. And they need to be focused on insurance. That's what they're good at. We now are focusing on the technology and helping them learn what's out there and then giving them a way to compare different solutions, again, for them to be able to narrow down the ones that seem best for them and pick the right one.
Okay, because that is true. In a way, agencies are the same, right? We're all our own fingerprints, right? We're all unique. But I think that we kind of do have a cookie cutter process that someone calls into our office and needs to make a change, or they email to us and need to make a change, or they go online. It's those same things. I think it's the dough that's the cookies made out of that's unique. And I hear it a lot inside of the champions, inside the mastermind, where someone will say, what's the best AMS? It's
Right.
now gotten to where we don't get into arguments as to what's the best one. Now the answer is usually they're all unique, and they depends on what your agency needs and how your agency's set up and who your clientele is and what you're wanting to get out of it. And that
Exactly.
I'm saying
Well,
Catalyit.
my standard phrase, Jason, has always been, there is no best agency management system, but there is a best system for your agency.
Ooh.
And it is all those unique factors. You know, if you're primarily commercial, that's a whole different ballgame.
Right.
Excuse me. If you've got to focus on both commercial, personal lines, maybe even now benefits is growing for a lot of agencies. That's a different, you know, set of rules or things that you need to look at. And what we do, certainly management systems are one, but I mean, we have, I think now over 20 different categories of technology. And we have my goal is for Catalyit to be the resource for every, what we call solution providers, vendors, that has a product, service, or platform that agents should be aware of to be on Catalyit and discoverable. And again, if somebody, you know, you talk to somebody and I'm using this tool, now there's a place they can go check it out and get more information, not just have to go to the website or have to do a Google search. Whole goal here is to help agents save time and get them to the best choices they can make for their organization.
Wow. I mean, that's a big undertaking.
It is, actually. And you know, I've got a team of about 7. Several are independent contractors. We now have 2 full-time employees. We just hired an operations manager. Interestingly enough, Olivia Schmidt has come on board to kind of help us continue to move forward and develop. So we've got some great talent. People have been around the agency world for a while, some long-term people and newer people to give a great mix to agencies. And we do 3 times a month. We have live events. So a training once a month, what we call a open Q&A, mastermind call, group coaching. Bring your questions. We'll have a conversation for an hour and a half and help get you the direction you need. And then what we call a demo lounge, which is vendors actually giving 15 to 30 minute demo of whatever they offer. So again, agents can go on the platform, find these things, look at them, narrow down who they contact to go deeper. But now they don't have to contact everybody. They can contact the 2, 3, or 4 that they think are going to be a best fit for their agency.
Wow, yeah, that's something that's been needed to aggregate all that together. You know, sometimes it's like so many things. You don't realize you need it until somebody actually does it, and it's like, wow, we've needed that for a while. You know, so Steve, I mean, data is a huge thing inside of agencies. That's part of this, and I mean, it's one of the things that you deal with carriers a lot, and we're not here to beat them up. I want to compare and contrast, though. I mean, I have a producer in my agency. He's 43 years old, used to be a bigwig with Amtrak. When all this slowdown happened, he decided not to go back and join me, and he's done fabulous work, right? But for the first year of his life in personal lines, he used all the normals, okay, the ones that we all have.
Yeah.
But in the last 8 months, he has used the Insurtech carriers. Okay, not no loyal listeners, as you know, I'm not saying one's better than the other. We may use names. We're just saying names. It's hard for me to get him to quote anything else
because it's so easy.
So easy.
Yep.
Jason, the questions I have to ask, and he still has the customer on the phone for a while, but he only has to ask the address, and then he's going through just confirming things. And then he's now creating conversation, and we're not having to, then jump back into asking the VIN number and then try to go back into a hey, little conversation. And it's like, so not only is he able to get the quotes quick, they're very competitive. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're the best, which is like any other carrier. I mean, my first thing, Steve, is how long do carriers allow this to go? Meaning, travelers, I don't want to say companies. These companies start to realize they're losing market share. Is that when they start to say, wait a minute, we need to get in there and try to buy these? Or do we not buy it and we create the technology? What's your thoughts around this, Steve?
Well, I think a couple things. One is there's no question that the traditional carriers, I'll say that.
Well said.
Have been around a long time. And they frankly have a lot of legacy stuff they're still trying to fix or change or upgrade, whatever the right term is there. And many are doing it. It's an expensive and time-consuming proposition, which is frustrating, right, for us and agents, because actually I think right now agents are moving much faster than the carriers are.
Truth.
And, I think you'll see more carrier acquisitions of technology, but I'm not sure that's going to be a good move because, again, you've got this legacy mindset at a carrier. They've been successful for a very long time. They know the insurance business, and this technology focused, maybe not as much depth in insurance, but certainly with technology. The question is going to be, how's that culture going to mix and who's going to win? And so then it might be, as you mentioned, agents saying, well, you know what, I'm going to bypass those carriers. And frankly, I do think the carriers have more to worry about in the Insurtech world than the agents do. Because now as agents, you have more options, and you've just described it. The question I think agents are struggling with or will be struggling with is, all the Insurtechs that came out early on to get rid of the agents, right? We don't need agents anymore. And that just wasn't true. Right. Never was true. They didn't understand it. But now if you look at them, almost all of them are coming back to and building agent focused. Right. We need agents, right? We need agents. And I've been trying to figure out for a while kind of what changed or why. And I think it's that independent agency system has, latest numbers, 36,500 locations. There is not enough money in the private equity or venture capital world to build that kind of distribution again. It's already there. And customers have voted with their wallet. They still like talking to somebody.
They do.
Not just a robot. And agents have been remarkably resilient in this whole process. So I think it's, and kind of in that same breath, I got to say to agents, you can't just sit back and assume that's going to continue. Right. Again, things are changing fast. Customer expectations are changing fast. 2 years of a pandemic have poured gasoline on all kinds of things, both for agents and for their clients. Right? You've seen it. You've seen, I remember talking to you at some point in the recent past of doing a proposal to a $300,000 commercial account via Zoom. I mean, who would have thought? I mean, agents would have been sitting in my classes 3 years ago, absolutely aghast, saying, you are an idiot. We will never do that.
I know.
Huh.
I might have been one of them even.
You might have been. Yeah.
Even as far ahead thinking as I am, I probably would have been one of them. And I think scalability. You go to, they wanted the Insurtech carrier or people, the Insurtech segment wanted deep pockets. They thought, okay, the carriers have deep pockets. If we go develop something, the problem with it is not only did they have legacy systems, but they all have their own legacy system.
Right.
And that is hard to scale.
Yep.
But wait a minute. These insurance agents down here, besides all those locations, they really only have 5 or 6 systems. Mm-hmm. And there's lots of them. So we can't charge them millions, but all of them will pay $40, $50, $60, $100, $300 a month for something. Yeah. Right? So I think it was the scalability. And here's where I think we're going next, is they've helped us with our tools for the front end, Steve. I think the next wave of Insurtech is to help us with the tools on the back end. How do we service? How do we do those things that are going to help us until renewal and at renewals? We've got a little bit of hint of those, but right now everybody's like focused on how do we collect the data? How do we best prospect? How do we best find them? How do we best the sales process? But yeah, so that's good. Great stuff right there, Steve. Great stuff. I had one other question. I'm looking at my questions here. But Steve, anything else that you want to mention as we wrap up for the future or anything? I mean, where do they find out more about Catalyit? I was saying Catalyst, and it's Catalyit, right?
Well, yeah, and I was going to say the name comes from Catalyst for change and IT at the end for technology. And that's a whole other story about how difficult it is to name a company and find domains and all of that. So
I like that though, Catalyit. Yeah. I mean,
so
I like that.
Catalyit.com, and you can get some information there about what we're doing. I'm pretty excited about it. We've got a way too long list of improvements that we're starting to work on and making to the platform, make it, again, easier for the agent to be able to go in and find solutions that make sense for them. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm excited about it. It's you sort of alluded to it. It's kind of fun at maybe the other end of my career, to see what I've worked on developing and see how it's improving and scaling to be able to help more agents. And that's exciting to me.
It is. And Steve, I get a lot of people who will email me occasionally and they will say, like, man, you know so much about the industry and da-da-da-da-da. I can't wait until I've been. It's why you know so much about the industry. There's so much value in going and hanging out with your peers and sitting down at a round table at a lunchtime at some conference and just discussing and hearing what different people are doing. And I think I get to hear a lot of people. I've done over 700 of these podcasts, but you've done more podcasts, if you look at them that way in your career, by having these conversations with people every day. And it is good at the other end of your career, very nice way to say it, is that you're aggregating almost all this shit that you have in your head. And I mean, and what, also, so I don't butcher it, make sure the loyal listeners know about the book that you had come out. Is that 2 years ago already or last year?
Yeah, fall of 2019. I published a book called The Bezos Letters, 14 Principles to Grow Your Business Like Amazon. And that's a whole other story, but it's been a fun journey, surprising. It's now been translated into 18 different languages across the world.
That's awesome, dude.
It's pretty surprising and amazing and fun. Yeah.
That is. Did you ever make an audiobook of it? Or is it on Audible?
Audio, Kindle. Yep, we've got all formats.
Did you do it? You were
did.
The speaker?
I did.
Oh, wow. Cool stuff.
Yeah, and it was an interesting process too. So
right. And if they want to find out all this stuff, they can go to steveanderson.com.
Yep.
And I mean, and you're gonna find all the Catalyit and all this stuff like that. Loyal listeners, he's been a longtime friend of mine. If you think that I'm halfway smart, you're halfway wrong. But I'll tell you this, Steve has been a big role model for me, someone I've always looked up to. At the same conference, Chris Amrine, however you say his name.
Amrine, yep.
Amrine was at that same conference, and he was wearing a shirt that said "Insurance is fun."
Yep.
And I remember that. I remember you. I remember that stuff, and it molded me into who I am today. Especially with you making me think outside the box. Once I got outside of my cocoon of my old agency and realized, like, wow, there are people thinking like me. And it's really fun because my son will now, who's in the agency, will go to some of these things and he'll come back and be like, Dad, they Loss Run Pro. That's how we found Loss Run Pro.
Yep.
He hates the archaic way that he has to get loss runs. And he found this and he's like, Dad, check this out. And I look at it, I'm like, oh, wow, thing is a fantastic program.
Exactly.
So just things like that, just getting out there and allowing those new, fresh brains. And at the same time, never forgetting those who are at the other end of their career, that your wisdom is more valuable than maybe you know. And sometimes,
well, and I was going to say, kind of the way I think of it really is that, you know, when people ask, well, that's stupid, why did that happen? We might actually be able to give you the history on why it happened that way. And maybe we didn't see the unintended consequences to those decisions, but there are reasons why we do things the way they do. We do.
So well said to the younger generation. Believe it or not, there is a reason why we do the things that we do. That's so well said. So well said. Steve, appreciate your time, buddy.
Jason, always a pleasure.
And to all you loyal listeners out there, you know what I do because I do it for you. Tell me your thoughts and tell me your ideas, and I'm going to tell the world what you have to say. This has been Cass. He's Anderson, and we're out.